world of cable news screaming and social media echo chambers, it's easy to lose the signal in the noise. Every day, policy is debated, votes are cast, and your tax dollars are spent. We cut through the headlines to bring you the critical context you need, focusing on what's really going on in news and politics. Welcome to the Analytical Iowan Podcast. This is your daily dose of fact-driven politics. Let's analyze today's news. Here's Eric.
We are back here on the Analytical Iowan Podcast. It will be Thursday, January 22nd, as you are listening to this. And once again, this is going to be a TikTok live podcast. Now, we are waiting for people to jump in the room. I didn't really tell anybody about this podcast or about this live. We're going to be talking news and politics like I typically do whenever I am live. We got a lot to talk about. We have the big meeting that happened in Davos, Switzerland today, and how Donald Trump was a national embarrassment again, like always. He gets up and says a bunch of shit that's not true, and really just ends up, embarrassing us from going through and doing everything else. Now, he ultimately comes away from it, despite just hours before at Davos when he was talking about everything when it comes to getting Greenland and why we need it and this and that. He comes away and says, well, we have a framework of a deal. G.I. Gallifrey says, good evening. Hey, G.I., glad to see you. Let's see if I can do this. We'll see if we can get some more people in there. Right now, we've only got a couple in the room. And we are going to be, but we got a lot to talk about, like I said. He comes out and says there's a framework of a deal, and he's going to get controls of pockets of Greenland. G.I. Gallifrey says, so ICE thinks they don't need a warrant now. Yeah, I saw that they think the administrative warrants are going to be enough, yet the courts have routinely held that they do need a judicial warrant signed off by a judge. This is just more ICE acting lawless. And I was in a live earlier with Representative Ro Khanna. Now, I was not a guest on that panel. I tried to be. And Ro Khanna is pushing that they end up cutting back on funding on the ICE vote that is tomorrow. ICE is going to be up for a funding vote. They are looking to extend $10 billion in funding for ICE. This is the yearly expenditure. And this is in addition to the $18 billion that was passed in the One Big Beautiful Bill. So they keep, if they don't let them bullshit you and tell you that it is just going to be, we're just passing the same funding that ICE had under the Biden administration. It's not the same, not even close. And as G.I. Gallifrey was talking about with the warrantless entry, he said that's when we stand our ground. And a lot of states have stand your ground in the Castle Doctrine. And maybe, not that I am advocating for that at all, but maybe that is what it's going to take. We have untrained people out there in ICE doing whatever they want. We find out that they have cut the ICE training back. And the Democrats really need to look at getting rid of ICE when they get back in charge. They need to look at drastically getting rid of it. ICE was not its own thing prior to 9/11. I believe they were under another department. Then they got branched out, and maybe we need to fold them back into something else, put in way more oversight. And simply put, I just don't think it's going to work to keep ICE under its current label, because people are not going to trust ICE at all. And they shouldn't right now. There needs to be a full reckoning when it comes to ICE, and everybody that has been responsible for all of the things ICE has done should be held to account when Democrats are back in power, even if it's just after the midterms and they control the House and they do a full investigation. ICE is just doing whatever it wants at this point. And that's going to be ICE is going to be one of the things that is going to continue to be a talking point going forward, because we can see the atrocities that ICE is doing, the things they are attempting to do, etc. And now that they are going from just Minneapolis, now apparently they're heading to Maine too. Molly says, stating get rid of ICE will backfire like defund the police. Better to add in control. Yeah, obviously it would need to be worded better. Because that is one of the thing. One of the things that Democrats suck at is, messaging. When they said defund the police, they didn't mean defund the police. They meant demilitarize the police and cut some of their funding and reallocate those resources elsewhere. But defund the police was able to be just, ran into the ground by the Republicans and fearmongered against. Sorry, Mom says, we voted for this. Yeah, and that's why you're blocked. I don't deal with the MAGAs. It's not worth it. All they do is, they report you. They try to get your life taken down. And quite honestly, they don't add anything to the conversation. You voted for this. So you voted for people to, bust down doors, drag people out with no warrant. But yet you fearmongered against that, saying Obama was going to do that, Biden was going to do that when it came to confiscating your guns. What's next? If Donald Trump came out and said everybody needs to turn them over for national security, would you be outside handing them over? It's ridiculous. G.I. Gallifrey says, we didn't have ICE before 2003. We would be fine. We would be. The problem is that it is a way that the Republicans can counter it with, spinning the message. And Democrats are horrible about keeping the message straight. Republicans are great at muddying the water. Molly says, doesn't matter, it gets twisted. That's exactly what I mean. G.I. Gallifrey says, a complete rebrand and they don't need deadly weapons. Yeah. Optimistic says, what do you think about JD going to Minneapolis? I think it is a joke. An Optimistic says, but not meeting with governor or mayor. Well, that tracks. He's going to show up. He's going to do a little press event. It's going to accomplish nothing. And him being there isn't going to actually calm the tensions down. Shanot says, hell, fuck no. About what? In what context? Are you talking about defunding ICE? Are you talking about Republicans? Where's the context there? J.D. Vance going to Minnesota isn't going to solve anything. It is just going to actively probably make the situation worse. Thing is, he doesn't have the following. He doesn't have the influence that Donald Trump has. but they're trying to, and I think one of the reasons why he is going to Minneapolis is they're trying to correct the problem that the Biden administration had with Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris should have been showcased from day one. She wasn't. And I think they're trying to show everybody, and it's not going to work because he's an incompetent moron, that he's ready to take over, that he's involved. And that they're trying to make him to be ready to take over. And with everything going on with Donald Trump and his health, they may need J.D. Vance sooner rather than later. Molly says Walz should do a Newsom and meet him at the airport. Yeah, that would be something. Meet him at the airport and, you know, yeah, you got another Trumper in here. You know, actually hold him accountable. Say, hey, okay, you're here to view things. Well, talk to me. I'm in charge. I'm the governor. And you're not going to sidestep me. BWD and a bunch of numbers says, what's wrong with his health? He's fine. Followed by JK saying nothing. It's all liberal cope. Well, they're both blocked now because we don't deal with maggots here. Those maggots can go fuck off somewhere else. But Donald Trump's health is not great. They just don't want to see it. They don't want to view Donald Trump's health as being anything other than perfect. Because they know when he's gone, their political power is gone. He made it okay for them to come out of the woodwork and act like fools and say all the things that they want to say, etc. And go from there. You know, him being involved or him being unhealthy, Donald Trump is bad for him, right? They want to act like he's okay. But if you even watched part of what happened today at Davos, he's not in good shape. He couldn't walk a straight line when he was walking the red carpet. He was staggering his way down, which is a sign of somebody who potentially has dementia or has maybe had a stroke. And as I pointed out in a video, I think that is going to go up here soon. If I walked like that out in public, I would be probably arrested for drunk in public. Edward Adis says who? Talking about dirty diaper Donnie Trump. He was staggering down the red carpet. He had a very significant lean when he was leaning against the podium. And he's had a lean for quite a while, which is another sign of somebody who is suffering from dementia. He was very low energy. And we got another Trumper. Gone. And another Trumper. Gone. I don't deal with them. No. He was leaning up against the podium. He was very clearly leaning at a significant angle. Very low energy. He was forgetful. Hell, he confused Iceland and Greenland multiple times. His health isn't great. Look at the bruising on his hands. I think with the bruising, that they end up, they're giving him IV treatments, and they've blown out the IV in his veins, in his arms, and they've moved on to his hands. And when they end up not being able to get a vein in his hand, they turn around. Now they had to switch hands. That's why you're getting bruising on his left. Now, I've had to block a few MAGAs in here, which is fine. I don't deal with MAGA. And I block them all because they don't add anything to the conversation. They say things like, well, what about Biden? Biden hasn't been president for over a full year now. We're not talking about Biden. We're talking about the active president right now who appears to be suffering from dementia. Katrina says, who wants to deal with MAGA? Exactly. Not me. I don't deal with them. I block them all. Because all they do is they disrupt everything. They try to talk over you. And they report you're live and try to get you taken down because you hurt their feelings for calling out their bullshit. And Donald Trump gets out of Davos today after trying to say that we did more for NATO and than any other country. Yeah, maybe that's true, but still, that doesn't give us a right to actively go after a sovereign country. Gloria says, sundowner syndrome. I see it every day at work in a senior's manner. Yeah, exactly. He's sundowning. That's why he's up at night. We have so many issues with him, and I've seen people just like him. Now, I'm not in the healthcare industry, but there is something clearly wrong with him. And ultimately, when he's gone, they're going to have a full investigation, much like what the Republicans wanted to do, to look into the health of Joe Biden. And they need to look into how bad his health was, who knew what and when, and who helped prop up Donald Trump and keep him going. Joe says, we are the biggest contributor to NATO, in my opinion. Yeah, we are, because we have the biggest military out of them. But that still doesn't mean anything about us having the right to a sovereign nation. That doesn't mean, well, we're the biggest contributor to NATO, we can just claim Greenland because Donald Trump thinks we need it. Now, he's backing off of the Greenland claims. Gets done at Davos, at least done with speaking about his part. And he comes out like a couple hours later with a statement saying that they've come up with a framework of a deal with the head of NATO, and that everything's going to work out or whatever. The NATO comes out with a statement and says, well, we've kind of come to a deal where Donald Trump is going to get, or the United States is going to get access to pockets of Greenland. And Coffee says he lying. Are you talking about Donnie? Or are you talking about me? No, Donald Trump, they said he's going to get controls of pockets of Greenland. And those pockets, I think what he's going to get is going to be the land around where the military bases, are, right? That we're going to just get control of the bases. They're going to call it sovereign U.S. soil and call it good. Aunt Molly said stock market fell like a rock. Yeah, it started to fall like a rock because he was threatening to go into Greenland, and they were saying, you do that, we are going to crash your market, basically, and take the bazooka to it and just not buy anything from the United States at all. BB says, we have a Space Force base there. Where else do we have a Space Force base? I'm not 100% sure. Ayatollah says, and Trump blamed Iceland. Yeah, he mentioned Iceland multiple times, in part because he got confused and he wouldn't back off of it because he didn't have anything there to prompt him to uh, uh, go back on it. Joe says if Trump was lying, he wouldn't have lifted the tariffs. No, Donald Trump was lying. Well, maybe wasn't fully lying, but it was a distraction. It doesn't mean he wouldn't back off the tariffs because, well, he's backed off of them several times. And JMO says it was a chess move getting NATO on board to secure our security. Yeah, right. We don't need Greenland to secure for security. Uh, yeah. We don't need to acquire Greenland in order to do that. We just uh, we already have bases there. They're an ally. We don't need to acquire it physically. We can do something else. Ruthie says, I just can't understand why Congress can't stand up to him. Well, I've talked about it the last several lives I've done. Representative Don Bacon of Omaha has said if he militarily goes into Greenland that they have the votes to impeach and remove. They're waiting. They're having discussions behind closed doors. When the Republicans decide to make this move on Donald Trump, it's going to be quick, fast. It's going to be in a hurry, and they're going to know the outcome before they ever begin. I don't think the articles of impeachment would even be dry before they are asked to be voted on. They will get voted on, sent over to the Senate, and there would be a trial almost immediately. Because that's what we need. And they're not going to want to give Donald Trump very much time to burn the Republican Party down in the process. Fink says, if I had low IQ, I would be MAGA too. Exactly. Sable says, and sell American bonds. Yeah, that's the other thing. They were going to sell, start selling off American debt. And the only reason we are able to fund anything from the government is because we borrow money. We have been in deficit spending since George W. Bush. Clinton had us in a surplus for a while, but Bush fucked that up. And we need to keep borrowing money to keep paying our bills. And now the people we've borrowed from are saying, yeah, we may not borrow you any more money, and it may be time to pay up. Molly says we already have a right to build bases. Exactly. We've got agreements to build bases. But Donald Trump doesn't know or care about any of that. GT Senior says 25-year Air Force vet. We don't need Greenland. Exactly. RAE says mixed up Iceland with Greenland. Yes, very, very much so. He did that multiple times. And Caroline Levitt just said, well, no, didn't happen. You didn't see it. You're the one confusing things. What he said was it was a piece of ice. They're trying to gaslight us in real time, but the video is right there. Hannah says Europe should sanction us now. Wouldn't blame them one bit if they did. GT Senior says Trump has dementia. And that bro is crazy. Yeah, he has dementia. He is crazy. Ayatollah says taco. Tumble Monkey says one base. We have one base on Greenland? I thought it was a couple. Doesn't matter. We still have a base there. Kiss Me Quick, who I just blocked, says I'm uninformed, which I am not. I actually spend a lot of time checking out news and politics, and I don't get my talking points from Fox News or the Elder Millennial. Will says delusional. You saying I'm delusional? GT says they would sell our debt And the dollar would come down like a rock. Exactly. Wow, Clinton got, let's see, says, wow, Clinton got a balanced budget approved. But huge deficit explosion. Yeah, Clinton did have us in in surplus spending. He balanced the budget. The deficit exploded after Bill Clinton because of two forever wars with Iraq and Afghanistan. They had, George W. Bush spent a shit ton of money. And despite Republicans saying that they are fiscally conservative, they're only fiscally conservative when Democrats are in office. They only care about the deficit when Democrats are in office. Molly said Clinton had surplus plus Bush exploded it. Yeah, they did. Dan the Man says Democrats backed him too. Democrats are warhawks too. I never said they weren't. Coffee says, what will happen if the American dollar goes down? I don't know. If it starts to crash as bad as it could be, we could be staring at something as bad as 1929. We could be staring at another Great Depression very easily. And the only plus side, if that were to happen, would be that Democrats would be in a position to have power for potentially 20 plus years. RAE says, only time we have had surplus budget under Democratic presidents. Probably. We're typically always in deficit spending. Ayatollah said Trump raised debt by 25% in the first term. Bearded Chickens said, if that were true, then why are we cutting spending? Wouldn't that be considered conservative? No, we're not cutting spending. They're exploding spending. Look at the one big bullshit bill. While they did cut funding to food stamps and Medicaid, they added $18 billion a year in ICE spending. They cut, instead of cutting spending, they cut revenue. They gave more tax cuts to rich people, so less money is coming into the system. That is completely and totally absurd. That's not conservative. That's just stupid. G.I. Gallifrey said the world would be impacted if our dollar drops. Yes, it would. Dan says we are all in this together, so we don't want that. A recession hurts everyone. And then says Democrats want America to fail. Yeah. No, they don't. That's another Fox News talking point. Go fuck yourself. RAE says, Great Depression, 25% unemployment. Yeah. That's what we could be staring at. Coffee says, and they don't need it. And they don't need... Don't need what? I missed the context there because I was answering other questions. Tax cuts, yeah. The wealthy don't need tax cuts. The ironic part is the Republicans, the ones who want to talk about making America great again, when you talk about what they want to be great, they talk about things that happened between the end of World War II and pre-Reagan. During a period of history where we were taxing the wealthiest people in this country at 70 to 90% of their income. And they keep saying, well, we want to go back to that, but we don't want to tax them like we were there. We want to keep taxing them less. Well, what happens when you tax the rich at a high tax rate? You give them reasons to invest, to lower their tax burden. So instead of pocketing billions in profit, They build another factory. They maybe build 10 more locations. What have you. They put people to work. Maybe they pay better. And then they get tax breaks for doing those kind of things. And then everybody at the bottom actually succeeds. Just giving them more money to put it in a bank account doesn't actually work. We've been dealing with trickle-down economics for 40 plus years, and it's failed every time it's brought up. Yet every time the Republicans are back in charge, that's what they come to. Let's give more tax breaks to the rich. Let's give more tax breaks to the rich. Why? Why are we giving them tax breaks so they can put money in a bank account and let it sit and do nothing other than make them more money? If you tax them more, they invest it, and then they actually create the jobs. It's been proven over and over again. G.I. Gallifrey says, we need to raise it back up to 80%, no question, followed by Lincoln saying top 0.5% should be taxed 80% at least. Exactly. Mike the Man says taxes have to be paid by everyone, the rich, the middle class, and low income. Everyone, 20%. That's a bullshit argument. That's a bullshit argument. Saying we should tax them all at 20%. That doesn't work either. Why? Because flat rate sounds great, okay? But what a lot of these wealthy people do is they take minimum wage or barely above minimum wage level salaries, and they get all of their money in bonuses and stock options and things like that. We need to close the loopholes. Besides, the tax burden on people is way different. It sounds good on paper saying, well, everyone pays a fair share. It's just 20%. But if you have $1 million, 20% of $1 million is 200,000. You're still left with 800,000 to spend. But if you only made $10,000 and you're taxed at 20%, that's $2,000. You're only left with $8,000 to spend to pay your bills the rest of the year. And I know that number's low, but I did it for ease of understanding. You can't do that. It has to be proportional because the burden gets higher the less money you have. The higher your tax rate, the less you're going to be able to buy after taxes. If you make more money but you give them a very low rate, it doesn't work that way. Lee says, let's get Biden back. He did so well. Yeah. I can tell you're a MAGA, so you're gone. Mike says, so why do some pay more and some don't pay? Because they find ways to just work it out. Okay, you take $100,000 salary as CEO of a company, but you get $10 million in stock options. The way the code works right now, you keep that stock for a year and a day. You can sell it. Whatever you've gained, and it would all be gain because you didn't end up paying anything at all, right? It was given to you. You got it for zero. You keep it for a year and a day, and you sell it at full value. All of that is considered profit. But a year and a day, you pay no taxes on it. And Mike says, not talking about the rich, the lower caste pay less and still use the system. Yeah, that's again a bullshit argument, and I blocked you because you're a dumb fuck and you're not getting it. They pay less because they can't afford to pay more into taxes. They need the system because they can't afford to survive. But you want to treat them like they're the fucking problem. They're not. The people who have millions of dollars are the fucking problem. Molly says, yeah, capital gains pay lower rates. Exactly. You hold on to the stock for long enough, you pay nothing. And then what they do, a lot of them will then take that stock portfolio and go get a loan on the value of it. And then you don't pay income tax on loans. So it's all bullshit. It's all a way to get around paying anything, and then the lower classes pay the biggest tax burden. RAE says rich Republican politicians enact legislation that helps their rich donors. They exactly do. Eric says the rich convince many that the poor are trash. Yeah, the rich have convinced a lot of people that other poor people are the problem. That's why they were able to put in a bunch of these cuts, and they were all convinced that, well, it won't affect me because I genuinely deserve the food stamps. It's just going to affect these people over here who really don't earn it. They don't deserve it. Eric says, no wonder they want flat taxes. Yeah, a lot of the rich want flat taxes because it benefits them. They have other ways of making income. They don't necessarily make their money on wages. They get other income like stock options and things like that to where it's all tax free. They find ways around it. And they're able to do that because they have the means to live day to day, where most people, they get their paycheck, it hits their bank account on Friday on payday, and by Monday it's gone, and they're coasting until the next payday. Quantum says we should have a graduated tax rate on wealthy. No taxes on salaries under 20K. We already have something like that. There's a minimum income, and if you fall below that, you don't pay taxes. But the top 1%, we need to close a lot of the loopholes because they've found so many ways to get around it. And the longer they take advantage of it, the longer it is going to be worse and worse for the rest of us. The MAGAs, the Republicans, they want us to go back to a time of prosperity. But to get there, we need to have funds, coming into the government to get there. So you tax the rich, and beyond funds going to the government, you tax the rich. Like I was saying earlier, they turn around and they invest in their companies. They build another plant. They pay better wages. They hire more people. And now suddenly they pay less taxes. Lee says, my alimony is $13,000 a year, and I have to pay almost $500 in taxes. Yeah, the lower end people get shafted. The rich have it out again. They hold all the cards. And those are things that need to be fixed. The problem is one side of the equation has now been convinced that a billionaire gives a fuck about them. And believing a billionaire gives a fuck about them is like believing the stripper actually likes you. Or to put it into a more modern perspective, it's like believing the OnlyFans girl actually cares about you. It's ridiculous. You have a billionaire as president who has done nothing but enrich himself the entire time he's been in office. Doing things like overcharging for his rooms at Mar-a-Lago for the Secret Service he needs for his own protection. Everything Donald Trump does is a grift. This Board of Peace is another grift. Aunt Molly says, back when they paid a higher rate was when they invested in capital improvements. That's what I'm talking about. When the rich actually paid their fair share, Lincoln says, thought on the sin tax by the guy running for governor in Florida. I don't know what you're talking about. RAE says, didn't the tax code in the 50s make the rich pay more? Yeah, they paid like 91% of their income. Right after World War II, it was like a 91% tax rate on the top 1%. And that was only if they didn't reinvest and spend their money. And guess what? Like Aunt Molly says, there were tax incentives to invest. Exactly. That was when they were incentivized to build more factories, pay more wages. That's when there were ways where you could go out and start a small business in your town. And if you didn't already have the money, there were ways you could make it work and you could start that business and survive. You didn't have to already have funds and backing to be able to even start a small business, right? When you look at the media from the 1950s and 60s and 70s, when they're talking about, you know, the dad of the sitcom, like in Happy Days, he owned a hardware store, one small hardware store. It's all he owned. Was able to support a family of, depending on which episode you're talking about, either a wife and 2 kids or a wife and 3 kids on one income. But that was when the top 1% was taxed into oblivion, and they were investing around, and they weren't hoarding all the wealth. Now it's gotten to the point where there's no money there. You have to have money to make money anymore. And we need to go back to that other way of doing things. When we talk about raising the minimum wage, going up to a living wage, it was always meant to be a livable wage. The idea behind minimum wage was that one person could go out, work 40 hours a week, and support a family on one job. Somewhere along the way, mostly in the 80s, it was the script got flipped when rich people, using the Republican Party, turned it around and said, no, minimum wage isn't meant to be enough to live on. It's a starting wage. It's the bare basement. If you shouldn't be surviving on that. That's for high schoolers, and we've heard it ever since. Well, if you want better pay, go find a better job. Well, even here in the town I'm living in, which I never give out, but doesn't matter. If you're not paying at least 15, you're not hiring anybody. It's above minimum wage, sure. But they're only doing that because places like McDonald's and other bigger chains are starting at 15, and now everybody's got to start there or they get no employees. But that's still, even 15 an hour is not enough to afford to live. I was renting a 3-bedroom duplex here in my town just 4 years ago, and it was about $800, $850 a month. They're now asking almost $1,200 for that duplex. It's gone up that far in 3 years. They've done no improvements, and it was the type of place that didn't have central heat. They had baseboard heaters and a one-wall AC unit. That's it. That's all they had as far as heating and cooling. Your power bill by itself was $300 plus a month every month, and that was only to be, comfortable. Aunt Molly says it was before Walmart came to town and cut the knees out under small business. Exactly. Walmart came in, undercut everybody, and they straight up said, we don't care if your business is closed. One of the towns I was living in the 90s, I remember being in high school or maybe middle school when Walmart came to town. And they wanted a particular area as their place. And there were buildings there. There were stores that operated there. And they wanted it. They got the city council to agree to not only claim it for renovation, or what do they call it? City improvement or something. They got the city to buy the building, sell it to them for dirt cheap, and gave them like a 20-year tax abatement so they didn't have to pay property taxes. And then basically the year before that tax abatement was up, Walmart went to the city and said, well, we're either going to close up our stores if you don't give us an extension, or let us build at the edge of town and build a new location. And we're going to put up a bigger building, bring in a super Walmart, and give us another 30 years of no taxes. And that's exactly what happened. Mrs. Toast says, government and corporations have short arms and deep pockets. Exactly. RAE says, and they send their employees to the food stamp line. Yes, they do. Walmart has one of the biggest percentages of employees on government assistance anywhere. Molly says, I saw bike shops, hardware stores, clothes shops go out of business. I did too. And I got another bot in here with this TikTok coin scam thing. I think that's about the fourth one I've blocked over 3 different lives the last 3 days. But yeah, Walmart doesn't want to pay their property taxes. They don't want to pay their employees. But their hands always out for tax-free stuff from the government. You damn right. And that's another thing we got to fix. And those are all things the Democrats are going to have to fix when they get back in power. And they need to start holding people's feet to the fire. Now, and I think the Democrats are going to be back in power. They are going to win the midterms. Can we vote our way out of this? Yes. Molly says, welfare queens like Musk. Yeah, Elon Musk is one of the biggest recipient of government handouts. We've got all sorts of government contracts and government subsidies and things going to wealthy people. One of the things I've been saying, because so many things don't make sense with this administration and everything, like in the One Big Beautiful Bill, they passed $18 billion extra for ICE, and now they want to give them another $10 billion. And they're saying, well, where's all the, we need to find out where that money's going. We need to go through the entire budget, including the Defense Department, with a forensic accountant, and try to figure out, where has the money gone and why, and then start holding some of these contractors' feet to the fire and say, why are some of these things allowed to be 10, 15, 20 years behind schedule and billions of dollars over budget? But they want to convince us that instead people needing assistance are the problem. That's what Republicans do. Democrats need to run on a New Deal style message of helping people. And they need to go ahead and bring back the New Deal, something like that. It is where their best shot would be, call it the perfect deal, and trying to fix wages and income inequality and so many things when it comes to the economy. That needs to be their plan for the next couple of years. Problem is, they don't seem to have any full way to do that. User says, entitlement don't help people. Free shit don't help people. Just makes them reliant. Yeah, fuck yourself. I've heard that narrative for 20 years. Simple point is, the system's broken. If you can't live on $7.25 an hour and actually fund it, we've screwed up somewhere with the minimum wage. But again, you want to make the poor people out to be the problem. So if entitlements don't help people, then how do you get people out of poverty? If everybody does what the people who are against entitlements say and pull themselves up by the bootstraps and just get better jobs, when everyone's working those better jobs, who's stocking shelves at your local grocery store? Who's flipping your burgers at McDonald's? Who's doing any of that? Oh, wait, it should only be run by high school kids? So now it's only open 4 to 9 p.m. on weekdays and on the weekends when school's not in session? It's a bullshit argument. RAE says, I think the Dems will get in and stay in for many years in the future. Similar to FDR, but for 8-year stints. Yeah, I think so. I've been saying if Trump fucks the economy up as bad as he potentially could, and he almost did with this Greenland thing where our allies were talking about calling in our debts, Democrats could have power for 20 years, provided they actually do something to earn it. Not just, oh, we're in power, well, we'll fix it later. That's half the problem, is they get in and then they don't act with any expediency to get things done. And then when they get things done, they don't crow about their achievements. They just let them stand on their own and go, well, people will know what we got done. No. Brag a little bit. Molly says that's BS. I'm assuming talking about the comment on entitlements. Lincoln says, do you think Trump could be impeached for the third time? 100%. I firmly believe that he could be impeached a third time, maybe will be impeached a third time, maybe even before the midterms. But as I was talking about at the beginning of this live, when it happens, I expect it to go quick, fast, and it is going to happen so fast Donald Trump's not going to know how to react. If the Republicans make that call and they decide to move on Donald Trump, and according to Don Bacon, the Republican from Omaha, they had the votes if he took military action against Greenland. That they had the votes, and he said to impeach and remove. I think if they make that move, it's going to be quick, fast, and in a hurry. It's going to be one of those things where the articles are going to be fully written. They're going to show up and go, I've got articles of impeachment. I want them voted on, and once that vote crosses 218, it's going to be a snowball, kind of like what happened with the Epstein files. They're going to push it through. It's going to run to the Senate, and they're going to get rid of him. And if the Democrats don't do it, if the Republicans don't do it, I think the Democrats will impeach Donald Trump when they get the House back. The difference would be if the Democrats do it, there's less of a guarantee it's going to actually work. Now, Republicans may get on board because of the fact that they need to change their strategy going into 28. And I think their strategy for 28 is going to be trying to make J.D. Vance sympathetic of, oh, well, you got to give him another term, and you got to give him a Republican-controlled Congress because all those evil Democrats wouldn't let him get any of his priorities through. You know that's exactly how the Republicans are going to message. And at least with a certain section of this country, that is going to work. Blue says if there is an election, if there is a free and fair election, there's going to be an election. There's going to be an election. The Republicans are not going to be able to cancel it. There is no mechanism in our Constitution. There is no mechanism to stop it. The only thing they could try to do is in red states, where we're going to lose anyway, would be to try to pass something through their state legislatures where they just award the election to certain people. And I think that would be even a bridge too far for most Republicans, just because one of the things about Republicans, they love to go vote. They almost always show up to vote every time. And if they try to do something to fuck with that, I think that could be a bridge too far for Republicans. Mrs. Toast says keep pushing for the Epstein files. Exactly. The Epstein files is why Donald Trump is doing a lot of this. He doesn't want us talking about the files. He doesn't want us acknowledging the fact that he is in them. And that could be another reason why they end up going after Donald Trump. When that one image comes out that they cannot, that they can't get away from, right? Where they can't say, oh, it's fake or whatever. When it is an image of Donald Trump sitting there with a topless young girl on his lap or something, and he's not going to be able to twist from it, they're going to have to end up moving on him. Aunt Molly says, state controls elections. They do. Elections are state-run, and they're just not going to be able, especially when it comes to like rep elections and things like that, they're just not going to be able to do enough to block all of it nationwide. I don't see it happening. Blue says, do you think Mike Johnson will go along with that? Or do they need him to do it? I think when the impeachment part comes out, it's going to happen when they've had the discussions behind closed doors. And it's going to be one of those things where Mike Johnson will know if he doesn't go along with it, that they have the votes to remove him, and they would put in a speaker who would if he tried to fuck with it. I really do. I think when they make that that move, I don't think anybody's going to stop it. I think it is going to happen, and it's going to be a foregone conclusion if the Republicans initiate impeachment proceedings against Donald Trump. Because what is the old saying, to paraphrase it, when you go after the king, you better not miss? They're not going to miss, and they're going to want to do it as fast as possible to make sure that he doesn't have it, that he's got less of a chance to burn the party down on his way out the door. User said Blue loves to cheat. No, we don't, and you're already blocked. Because you only claim we cheated because your guy lost in 2020. That's it. And the only reason you think that there was any cheating is because your guy was the one who always says when he loses something that it was rigged against him. He's done it for decades. It's nothing new. SoCal Bev says, you can see that the pressure from the Epstein files is affecting his health. Keep the pressure on. Yeah, his health isn't good. And one of these days, the Big Mac is going to get him. And there was somebody suggesting in the comment section of one of my videos where I talked about how they had to turn the plane around going to Switzerland. They had to go back, get the other Air Force One, and go back. There was speculation that it was health related, and he did not look good at Davos. He didn't look good. His health is suffering. Quantum says, my family lived off government cheese for years. Can't tell you how important it was. We made it. Exactly. And the problem is the system, the way it is currently set up, is designed to keep people on it. Because the minute you make over their dollar threshold, whatever that number is, you get hosed and you lose everything. And I had employees that worked for me that would come to me and say, hey, my review's coming up. And I did the math. And you need to start scheduling me like 2 hours less a week. Because if I, just by working those 2 extra hours every week, it puts me over the income threshold and I lose. And there was a litany of benefits they lost. So it's like, okay, yeah, you're going to work 2 less hours just to make sure their income was down. And I know people on the right are going to say, well, see, that's fraud. But if the difference between working, and these were all people who had jobs, but they were making about $10 an hour at the time. So $40 a month, or I guess that would have been $80 a month. $80 a month, but they were going to lose $300 because it was a guy who was married, him and his wife. It was like $300 in food stamps plus health insurance and some help with rent. That he was going to lose over $80 a month. It doesn't work. Mrs. Toast says, do you think Elon Musk will rig the election again? I don't know, because I haven't seen any proof. I know something looked weird with the last election, but I haven't seen any definitive proof that he rigged it. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole till I see something that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that he did something. But I don't think so, because he's been more on the outs with Donald Trump. It hasn't been nearly as big of a friendship. He got what he wanted. He got his subsidies, he got his contracts, and he got his hand inside the government doing all the stuff he did with Doge. But I don't know what else he has to gain from helping Donald again. He got what he wanted. Jim says, do you think this is the end of the Republican Party? It's going to be a thing where if they don't do something to fix it, they could lose the Republican Party for a generation. It may not kill the party off entirely, but they could be just like they were in the 40s and 50s, where they were irrelevant for 20 years because the Democrats had a majority the whole time. Blue says state run, even if there's martial law. Everybody keeps saying there's going to be martial law. There is no mechanism for declaring martial law. Martial law means the military runs things. If the military is running things, the Constitution is null and void, effectively. It's not going to happen. And we have had elections every time on time when they were due, even during the Civil War. So there will be elections. Hazel says hello from California. Hello. RAE says, if not the end, at least the back burner for years. Yeah, that's exactly what I think. Republican Party is going to be on the back burner for a little while after this is said and done. Mrs. Toast says, but he's still breathing. For now. But his health isn't very good. Lincoln says, living in a red state is unbearable. It feels like everyone around me is so dumb and gullible. I'm in Iowa. I get it. Aunt Molly said, that is not fraud. If you were rich, it would be called estate planning. Exactly. Blue says, I just moved from a red state to a blue state. It's liberating. Exactly. Mokel says, martial law not possible because there's more of us than there is of them. Exactly. And I think the Republican Party would actually, if he legitimately started telling the military, I know he sent them to California and to LA, but he didn't give them orders to fire on civilians. If he tried to actually order them to shoot civilians, I think that's where the Republicans would probably step in and say that's a bridge too far. Quantum says, I don't think the Republican Party can be rehabilitated. I don't know. We'll see. I've been hearing that the Bush family is trying to recapture the party leadership with a cousin of George W. Bush, potentially as a candidate in 28. We'll see what happens. Jingleheimer says, in Trump's head, there is no constitution. In Trump's head, he's a king and he can do whatever he wants. Mokel says, and with this many people, they just need as much to put us under martial law, so not possible in any way. Exactly. Lincoln says, I could only imagine talking about moving to a blue state. Yeah. Thing is, Iowa used to be purple. We've only been solid red since Donald Trump came around. And I think we're heading back toward purple again. Trucker T says, sup, Eric? Hey, Trucker. Good to see you. RAE says, we don't have enough people in the military to do martial law. No, we don't. They just don't have the numbers. And they're expecting us to all be timid little sheep and back down. And they're finding out very quickly it's not going to work. They've believed their own propaganda for too long. You hear the people on the right side talking about, well, the left doesn't own weapons. Yeah, we do. There's a large group of people on the left that do. Trucker says, I saw one ICE vehicle been set on fire in Philly. You know, I haven't seen that, but it wouldn't surprise me. Blue asks Trucker, a civilian's car or ICE agent's car? Which Trucker said ICE. Okay. Well, that's interesting. Lincoln says, Missourians are Trump loyalists. They worship him more than they worship God. They do. And I think in part, and I've talked about this before, that it's because he did the impossible. Right? 2016, everybody was thinking that it was a foregone conclusion that Hillary was going to be president. She was Democratic establishment. She was she was even acting like she was going to win. Donald Trump was the outsider, and he's a buffoon. And I don't think he intended to win. I don't think he intended to win at all. But he did. He won, and then he beat Hillary. Okay, cool. And he took down their biggest boogeyman, right? Then you fast forward to 2024, and they're running against Kamala, and everything looked like Kamala Harris was going to win. By all metrics, she should have won in a landslide. and Donald Trump falls ass backwards and wins the presidency again. I think that's one of the reasons they worship him, is because they believe it was a frickin' miracle that he won. Jingleheimer says, I moved from Florida to Vermont, but turns out Vermont is very red. I think it's pockets of Vermont that's red, because Vermont keeps electing Bernie Sanders statewide. So I think it's just pockets, and you got pockets of red everywhere. I mean, Blue says, I travel to Vermont several times a year. It's pretty blue. Yeah, I would think they would be, with continuing to re-elect Bernie. Jingleheimer says, where I live, they hate Bernie. Well, yeah. Molly says there are pockets in New York too. Yeah, they're everywhere. Feldman says I have a couple of fondue sticks. Does that count? I don't know what you're talking about. Lincoln says Trump has the worst vocabulary. He has the intellectual capacity of a 7-year-old. Now that's not fair, Lincoln. Why are you putting down 7-year-olds like that? There's a lot of 7-year-olds that are more intelligent than Donald Trump. And they also have the capability to learn. Donald Trump doesn't. Lincoln says that's why they love him. Yeah, that's true. That is true. RAE says, I live in Kentucky and understand the misery of living in a red state. Yeah, I get that. Like I said, I'm here in Iowa, and we're red right now. We were purple, heading toward blue. I mean, we elected Obama twice. And then Donald Trump comes in after the Republicans re-elect a dinosaur in Terry Branstad to be governor, and we've been red ever since. But I think that's all going to start to change. We're heading back toward purple come November. Lincoln says because they can understand him, talking about Donald Trump having the intellect of a 7-year-old. And speaking of 7-year-olds, Morris is blocked. Trucker says there are more and more pockets of blue in Indiana. Well, that's good to hear. Mrs. Toast says, aside from being old as dirt, how is Chuck Grassley's health? I think Chuck Grassley's actually in better shape than Donald Trump. He may be healthy enough to be president. Nautica had said that the Democrats would never control Congress or the presidency again. And that's how certain Republicans actually think. They think they've won to the point where, oh, they've beaten the Democrats and they'll never hold power again. Reality is they only hold the House by like 2 or 3 seats right now, with special elections coming to fill a couple vacancies. So they hold the House by one of the thinnest majorities ever. And there's a chance they lose the House and the Senate as early as November. And there's probably going to be a Democratic president in 2028. It's ridiculous. They have no concept of what's going on. Slim says many people fear there should be a stronger candidate than Harris or even Clinton. I mean, a strong candidate would be great. We've got tons of people inside the Democratic Party who could run. The problem is we had a group of people who said that Clinton and Harris weren't progressive enough and they weren't strong enough on the issues they wanted. So they chose either not to vote third party, or in some cases voted for Donald Trump to show the Democrats that they need to put up a better candidate. Well, we know what happens when we elect people like Donald Trump. We're seeing it right now. We got to take the steps and the advantages that we can get now. So whoever the Democrat runs, providing that they're not as just as nuts as Donald Trump, we need to go that route, pick that, put them in, make some progress, and then if they're not it, we keep pushing for progress every chance we get. You can't take a step backwards to make a political statement. It doesn't work. Feldman says we have Pillen and Ricketts talking about the senators in Nebraska. Trucker says we have a lot of MAGA here talking about Indiana. Yeah. There was a lot more MAGA around me, but I'm not seeing nearly as much in the last few years. Feldman says we passed the medical marijuana bill in Nebraska. Our representatives are ignoring it. Not surprised. Mrs. Toast says J.B. Pritzker. Pritzker could be another candidate for the Democrats. Would be a good one. I don't think it's going to be Gavin Newsom. He's got a lot of baggage, and he's peaked way too early with people talking about him. I don't think it's going to be Tim Walz, even though I think he'd do a great job. Ro Khanna could be another one. That's a name that isn't thrown out there very often. I think he could be eligible. You got Ossoff in Georgia, Whitmer out of Michigan. There's a lot of Democrats that have potential. Molly says the House won on Trump's coattails. They did. R.A.E. says Thomas Massie and Rand Paul from Kentucky have surprised me by showing some humanity against Trump. Yeah, they stand up when it suits them for certain things, but it's the enemy. Oh, excuse me. It's the enemy of my enemy is my friend situation here. Burton says both Clinton and Harris were the most qualified individuals to ever run. They were up there. Let's see. RAE says vote blue no matter who. Progress, not perfection. Exactly. Quantum says Bashir. Yeah. Bashir out of Kentucky, another good pick. Mrs. Toast says Newsom is a pretty boy. Yeah. That's not really a fault. It's just he's peaked way too early. With the exception of Donald Trump, most of the time you do not see a candidate come out that is the clear front runner unless they are an incumbent 3 years out. And Donald Trump also broke the mold because most of the time, losing presidents do not run again. And Donald Trump tried that. And of course he won, but still, he broke the mold there. And I don't know, I think that would probably be a sign that Kamala Harris should not run, even though I think she'd do a great job. And maybe if she had more time to campaign, maybe it would work out. We'll just have to see what comes up. Blue says, I love Ro. Ro Khanna was great. Feldman says Jasmine Crockett. Yeah. Jasmine Crockett would be a good one. I don't know how that would work if the Republicans are going to attack her no matter what. But maybe as a VP candidate on somebody's ticket would be great. User says Sparkle Beach Ken. I'm guessing you're talking about Newsom. Yeah. Trucker says Stephen A. Smith. No. We should not fall into the Republican trap of running, podcasters and celebrities. Let's run actual politicians. Quantum says Ossoff. Yeah. A good one. No to Rand Paul. Exactly, Mrs. Toast. SoCal Bev says, I think it would be good strategically for the Dems to have a Southern Dem on the ticket in 28. I mean, wouldn't be a bad strategy. Kennedy did that with LBJ. Bubble Bam says baggage, talking about Newsom. Yeah, he's got a lot of baggage. And Molly says he's a smart, pretty boy. Yeah, but still has baggage. Blue says, I don't think she should run. There's a stigma attached to her. Needs to step aside. If you're talking about Kamala, you know, you could be right there. SoCal Bev says, I love Andy. Talking about Andy Bashir. He could be a good one. The Democratic bench is pretty deep. Who do the Republicans have? Their best bet is going to be running J.D. Vance. But we're already hearing Vance may run. Ted Cruz may run. A few others are talking about running against J.D. Vance. They're divided. It's going to be worse. Slim Jim says, what about Fetterman? He seems straight across the board. I hope you're joking. Fetterman's not going to be in Congress. He's not going to get reelected in 28 for his Senate seat. He might as well change his affiliation to Republican the way he's talking. Blue says to Mrs. Toast, I love Chris Murphy, just moved to Connecticut. Trucker T says he really thinks he has a shot. Unbelievable. If you're talking about Stephen A. Smith, yeah, we're not doing that. SoCal Bev says, I watched Newsom for years and many people have underestimated him. He's politically savvy. He is. He's politically savvy. But I just don't think he's not where the party needs to go. I think they need to go with somebody else. Bubblegum Bam says, Dear God, not Vance. The only advantage to Vance is that he doesn't have the stranglehold over the Republican Party like Trump does. He's going to be a lot easier to control. Blue says Cancun cruise. Yeah, exactly. And I heard he booked it to Cancun again. Mrs. Toast says hello from Massachusetts. That's a very blue area. Blue says, I think he's joking about Fetterman. I hope he is. I hope so. Fetterman, he's ridiculous. Trucker T says, I agree. He's doing a great job there down in Davos. Yeah. Newsom's doing great. Greg says, Tallarico and Kelly. Michael Jordan says, Newsom, no chance. Yeah, I just don't think he's got a chance there. Blue says, TikTok will become a U.S. company in 7 minutes. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen there. And if they start fucking with me too bad, well, I still post all my stuff up over on YouTube. And that's just a reminder that this will be up over on my YouTube channel. So check me out over there, Analytical Iowan on YouTube. I'm going to go just a little bit longer here. Lincoln said, agreed, we don't love Newsom, we need someone else. Slim Jim says, it's all about popularity contrast. Fetterman may be green, but at least he's willing to shake hands. Oh, it's not a popularity contest. Fetterman came in, he sounded very progressive. Then he had the stroke, I think it was what he had. And now he basically sounds like a Republican. And he is voting with Republicans on a lot of things. I don't think he gets reelected because of it. He's not the same person he was when he got elected. And he was one of the reasons he got elected is because he was saying the right things as a progressive Dem, and he was an outsider, and he didn't want to wear a suit. He was always shorts and a hoodie, and people liked that. And now that they've seen what he's done, I just don't think he gets reelected. Trucker T says establishment Republicans would have JD for lunch. Oh, yeah. Blue says people are talking about going over to Clapper. Well, and Trucker T says Clapper is horrible. Well, I've been on Clapper. I used to post my content over there. My biggest problem with Clapper, well, I got two problems with it. One, it's clunkier when it comes to uploading content. I don't know how many videos I would get 95% of the way through. It would fail and I'd have to start all over, and it just seemed to take forever to upload. And it wasn't a connection thing. Even though I was connected wireless, I literally had my phone sitting right next to the router and it wasn't doing anything. My other problem is I use a program to automatically upload my content everywhere else, and it doesn't work with Clapper. So that's one of my issues there. SoCal Bev says, don't love Newsom either, but I won't be surprised if he's one of the front runners. He may be an early front runner. I just don't think he actually makes it all the way through. Blue says, where will our group go then? Well, I'm going to still be here for as long as I can. And then I'm going to be over on YouTube, Blue Sky. I think that's where Mike's going to be, the Rational Boomer. We'll find a spot, and there'll be something that comes up. We'll figure it out. Diane says Fetterman will not get reelected. No, I don't think he will. Quantum says the stroke affected a portion of his brain, talking about Fetterman. Yeah. That is a thing. He definitely changed. Trucker says, yeah, I'm over there. I hate it. No telling what comes across your screen, talking about Clapper. Yeah. That's the thing. One of the things I did like initially about Clapper when I got over there was that their community guidelines were a little looser. So it felt like you weren't going to be walking on eggshells. Now we'll just have to see what happens with this app. And nothing may change for a while. But every social media platform has its lifespan. And they come, they go. I mean, at one point, everybody was on MySpace. And MySpace has been dead for 20 years. Facebook at one time was the place for everybody. And then it was migrated over. You know, it keeps moving. So wherever we all end up at, there will be a spot for us. Trucker says he's on here on YouTube. That's good to know for those people who are looking for you, Trucker. Mrs. Toast says, I love the Rational Boomer. Yeah, I think we all do here, pretty much. Blue says, I agree about Fetterman. Yeah, Fetterman is, he's something else. I just don't think he gets reelected. Trucker says, TJ and I went live together on YouTube. It was good. I'll have to check it out, see if I can find that video. Blue says, are there lots of inappropriate videos on Clapper? From what I hear, yes. Apparently, from what I hear, less restrictions on what you can show. I haven't found any of those videos, not that I went looking, but apparently some of the things you would normally find over on the fans' sites could be found on Clapper, recreational hobbies, of the green variety, could be done on live. So it's definitely interesting. RAE says we definitely need to enact rules, legislation around term limits, or how to get people out when ill. Yeah, we do. Problem is, the people in Congress would have to be the ones to vote on it. It would take an amendment. And I just don't see it happening. It'd be great, and maybe with enough younger people. I just don't see with the makeup of Congress as it sits currently and how it's looking like, even with the Democrats back in control, I just don't think there'll be enough support for that, because they're not going to cut off their nose to spite their face. Trucker says, of the green variety. Yeah, I was trying to find a way to say it in an appropriate TikTok-friendly manner. That would still get the point across. All right, so I've been going about 90 minutes here. I'm going to go ahead and get this wrapped up so I can get this posted. This will be tomorrow's Analytical Iowan podcast. I want to encourage you all to check me out over on YouTube, where I do post a podcast every single day for those of you that are new. I'm going to keep doing more of these lives. I do enjoy them. Didn't go anywhere in the direction I thought we were going to talk about from the get-go, but that happens from time to time. So I want to thank you for taking the time to join me. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will catch you the next time I go live.
That was Eric. That does it for our analysis today. If you appreciated us cutting through the noise to get to the critical context, please make sure you're subscribed to the Analytical Iowan podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.